Guys, welcome to Boomstick Tactical. In this video, we are going to continue on shooting accuracy improvement by looking at some very specific shooting errors. We're actually going to be looking at some different targets that demonstrate these errors and talk about some of the ways that you can improve your shooting accuracy.
Okay, some of the more common shooter errors that we see, including milking or squeezing with the whole hand right before the shot is fired. You can imagine how someone would milk a cow. That's commonly how it has gotten its name, is when you squeeze the trigger, you're actually tightening up the whole grip on your hand on the gun. And that is a common problem, along with a weak grip, not having a good firm grip on that gun. If you check out some of my previous videos on shooting accuracy, you can see some other demonstrations of how to get a proper grip on your firearm. The weak wrist, or limp wristing as it's sometimes known as, and can result in malfunctions of some handguns. If you're not holding a firm grip on that gun, and if you're letting that recoil control you instead of you controlling the recoil, you're going to have a problem there. That's where the push-pull scenario comes in that I talked about in a previous video. That push-pull action, pushing with your primary hand and then pulling slightly with your support hand, will help to reduce the weak wrist effect on your shooting. It will help you to really stabilize the firearm. You will also know that if you do not have your wrist alignment correctly, then that is another thing that can contribute to it as well. Imagine if you had two smiley faces, and this is kind of a way that you can actually practice this, is take a smiley face sticker and place it on each of your wrists, and then when you hold your firearm, those two smiley faces should be facing each other. And that is one exercise that you can do that will help you to have correct alignment with your wrists when you are shooting your firearm. And of course, incorrect trigger placement. Now, trigger control is a big thing. It is the capstone basically on everything related to firing an accurate shot. If you do not have correct trigger control, if you have incorrect finger placement, you're going to cause problems when you go to fire that shot. Too much finger is going to pull it to the right, too little is going to pull you to the left, as you'll see in some of the targets that we see here shortly. So it is very important. You can have everything else correct. You can have a good solid stance. You can have a great grip. But if you do not have correct trigger control, you're going to blow everything off. Okay, so let's look at some of these shooting errors and how they play in on a target. You can see here that we are looking at one where someone shoots low and to the right. Possible causes of that, again, are milking, squeezing with the whole hand as you're pulling the trigger, a loose grip, not having that right grip on that hand, and then thumbing with the offside hand. When you go to pull that trigger, for whatever reason, you're just trying to push a little bit with your support hand instead of keeping that gun locked down. Working on your grip, working on your trigger control, and that is some of the best ways to help to reduce that problem, using the snap caps and really working on trigger control, keeping that flinching down and really holding that firearm and that sight alignment in place. Another area, shooting high to the left, offside hand not gripping tightly enough. If you're just throwing it up there, if you're holding in a teacup grip or something like that, you're not really putting that support hand in play the way you need to keep that firearm locked down. All right, heeling, the heeling of it is similar to the milking. You're jerking your wrist when you go to fire that shot. You're trying to basically, you're anticipating a recoil. That's a big problem with that. That's what a lot of people do. And that's one of the biggest problems with accuracy, and why so many of these things come into play, is that people are just simply anticipating the recoil from the gun, and that throws everything off in many cases. The corrections, of course, working on your grip, your follow through, working on that trigger control. Once again, a remedial trigger drill. And you've seen in some of my previous videos a great way. The dime trick is a great way. I'll put some links up above and show you how to really work on that trigger control. The line or dot target is another way to work on this, as well as the shooting the strip. I'll also shoot in the link to my shooting the strip video, which is a great practice exercise. And shooting errors, of course, jerking the trigger. There again, as we'd mentioned many times, improper trigger control. Shooter-induced recoil. There again, that comes from anticipating the actual recoil of the gun. There's too many people that when they go to break that shot, they're more concerned about controlling the recoil than they are keeping that sight picture and keeping that trigger control just where it needs to be. And improper support hand use, again, you know, if you do not have your support hand lined up perfectly, if you are not gripping the firearm correctly with your support hand, you're going to throw your shot off as well. Too much or too little finger. As I mentioned before and in other videos, not having the correct placement of your finger on that trigger. These are going to cause problems. Okay, you can see here the pattern to the left. First off, trigger finger, you've got too little trigger finger on your gun. I actually demonstrate in another previous video that I did of how it can affect that. What you're going to do is when you actually start pulling that trigger back and you've got too little trigger finger on that, is you're actually going to push that trigger sideways, which is going to throw your shot off. Offside hand not gripping tightly enough, bringing that in, having your correct wrist alignment on your support hand. Those are all key in keeping your shot exactly where it needs to be. Now, if we will look a little further here, concentration lapse, that is a big thing. People not focusing on holding that sight picture as they go to break that shot and catching it on the wobble. And whenever you are looking at your sight picture, you will notice that there is just a little bit of movement in there. There is, just a slight movement. It is virtually impossible to hold it perfectly still, free-handed. But which thing that a lot of people will try to do is they will try to anticipate when that gun is going to be right on target, and then they will just jerk that trigger, which will then throw their shot off. Vision problems, of course, that is something as well. If you have cross dominance, there are ways that you can control that. Of course, one of the things that I do, because I am a cross dominant person, I'm a right-handed shooter, but I have a left eye dominance, is I will then actually close my left eye and then force my right eye to look through the sights and hold that sight picture. Sometimes people can hold both eyes open, but to fire an accurate shot, I generally will close one of my eyes and close my left eye mainly to keep my eye picture, my sight picture, straight in line. I have my right eye lined up with the targets, with the sights, and holding that sight picture with one eye closed is one way of overcoming the vision problem, with having the cross eye dominant problem. And you can see here a very loose pattern. Now, this is a another common way. Tensing or flinching, there again, anticipating that recoil. That's something that's going to throw you off. Not focusing on the sights. There again, it can't be said enough. Focus on that front sight, not on the back sight, not focusing on the target. You focus on that front sight. You keep, that everything else should kind of ghost out slightly, and your main focus should be that front sight post on your gun. After you practice that, the more you practice it, it will amaze you at how much faster your sight picture will line up on target once you get that down pat. Once you get it settled, once it's just second nature to you that when you bring that gun up that you're focused on that front sight, you're going to find that your sight picture aligns much faster. Again, vision problems. That is a big issue with cross-eye dominance. Just some people do have vision problems for whatever reason. That does lead them to not be able to keep that pattern tight, especially at longer ranges. If you take a pattern out, if you take a target out far enough, your best shooters, you're going to hold a wider group. It's that simple. I mean, there's just no way of doing that. In fact, if you go out far enough, even with a red dot, you get a target out far enough with a red dot, you can have the dot itself covering the whole target, and just hitting the target then is, is a great feat in times. So that's something else that we do see in shooting. Okay, we talked about grip errors, and I wanted to show you one of them. In this picture, you're going to see that this lady is holding an improper grip. For one thing, her primary hand, her right hand, is way too low on that back strap of that gun. Okay, her support hand, she is doing what is known as teacupping. And that is where you're basically placing your hand underneath and just holding up the gun as your primary hand. You're not really putting that into play the way that you need. A good grip, if you check out my other video, you can see a demonstration of a much better grip on that. You want to have those wrists. Again, if you had a smiley face placed in the middle of each of your wrists, they should be facing each other. That's a great exercise again to help you get the correct alignment on your shooting hands. Grip errors, wrist not straight, weak support hand, strong hand too low on the back strap, as we've seen in that picture. Those are going to cause problems when you're trying to fire an accurate shot. These are a great way to troubleshoot some of your shooting errors. I'm actually going to do a separate video on targets such as these that you can buy, that anyone can purchase online for little of nothing, and what they will do is will help you to troubleshoot the problems that you have with accuracy. These are a great little target. You can find them in a lot of places. Some of your gun stores will carry them in stock, your gun ranges, and or you can order them online, and we will look a little more on these in detail in a future video.
It can't be emphasized enough, guys. Practice makes perfect. Practice each one of these techniques that we've talked about. Work on that grip, work on that trigger control, work on that sight picture. And the more you practice, the better you're going to get. Also, remember safety. You can never, never talk about safety too much. It's a fun sport, but we need to be safe about it. So what I would like to hear from you all is, do any of these issues reflect problems that you're having? If so, I'd like to hear your thoughts on those down below, and also drop any comments about some of the steps that you've used to overcome them. Guys, hope you liked the video. I would appreciate it if you'd give it a thumbs up. Also, be sure to subscribe, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.